Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Gotham, the season finale of Supergirl, as well as the latest episode of Lucifer. Like always, if I'm talking about something that you want to listen to, you can always look in the description down below. I include the timer and I start talking about each of the respective shows. So for example, if you want to hear what I say about this week's episode of Gotham, you can skip what I had to say about the season finale of Supergirl and or the latest episode of Lucifer. Well, the first thing I'm going to talk about is this week's episode of Gotham. So in this episode, a lot of different story elements that happen. Obviously, the whole Ed and Penguin situation, which I really appreciate. The fact is that Ed's like, yeah, don't call me Ed. Because for him, it's like, oh, Ed was this weak person. He didn't know who he was. I'm the Riddler. I know who I am. Because he went through so much trying to establish who he was. We all saw what he kind of bent over backwards to find out who he was, kind of driving himself a little crazy just so he can see Oswald to help. I'm sure that probably infuriates him even more. I mean, to the point during the episode he actually did touch Oswald. It's okay, you're real. Because I'm sure on some level it pisses him off that he had to rely on Oswald. Even, obviously, there was the act of killing Oswald, helping him make him who he is, but also the fact of the matter is that he's just... Oswald's in his head, too, and even then, it was just like... Even then, Oswald still helped forge him into who he is, so I'm sure on some level that has to get under his skin a little bit, you know? But it's like, obviously, they're forced to work together, which I thought was kind of interesting in the circumstances of, like, obviously, like, Edge trying to escape and everything, but he ends up shooting Oswald with a dart, so Oswald started making all this noise so that people would come and stop him, just to spite him. It's like, dude, I'm not getting out here. It's like, no way I'm going to let you get out here. You try to get out here, I'm going to make a ruckus and make it so you get caught. Which, like I said, they end up working together and deciding, like, hey, we're going to, like, get out of here together. We're going to set some guidelines and stuff like that. Which, by the time they get out, they're like, well, there's still 5 hours left on our agreement. So they ended up walking away from each other. Still, it's like the person you hate, you know, because for Oswald, it's like, this is the man that he used to love. And for Ed, it's like, this is the man who was once my best friend, probably like his only real friend, you know, in such a long time. And now they're just mortal enemies. And then you have, you know, Penguin announcing, like, I have an army of my own. Granted, the only ones we really know about are Freeze and Firefly, but I mean, granted, who's to say he hasn't acquired some more subsequently since coming back to Gotham, but that's something we'll just kind of have to wait and see. But at the end of the day, it's like Barbara and her army versus, you know, along with Ed, who still kind of falls under that category, versus Penguin and his army, which who will come out on top, it's hard to say, considering the fact is that let's not forget, Barbara's army is going to be kind of divided, considering the fact is her and Tabitha aren't on the best of terms. So that's definitely going to complicate things going forward. Then on the Bruce Wayne front, Bruce ended up being put in a position where the guy wanting Bruce to obviously get rid of his memory, like the memory that held him back for so long, the memory that caused him so much pain, and that's the memory of his parents' death, all that pain that's associated with it. It fuels him, but at the same time, obviously, it clouds Bruce, and it's like, the guy wants Bruce to have complete and utter clarity. It's like, once you get rid of that, your mind, it's more kind of like clay. You can kind of fold it, mold it into how you want it to be. At first, Bruce is reluctant to let it go because it's like that pain is like, I guess for him, it's almost like if I let go of this pain, that means I'm letting go of how I felt about my parents, my love and sadness of them being gone. Like, obviously, because with that pain goes with everything associated with, like, love and hate and everything tied to it. So, which sadly, Bruce does kind of give up his pain at the end, like after talking to this guy, which is so sad because it's like, I figured as much. The guy just wants Bruce to be numb so he can make him to a weapon. Didn't realize basically he wants Bruce to become one of the people that they're with. They're called Talons, which is like, maybe they've said that before, but it just never clicked in my head. It's like, oh yeah, Talons, Court of Owls, Talons. It's like, I should have figured as much. But these, not necessarily mindless, but the fact of the matter is because they don't have their feelings and stuff like that, they don't interject. They're just like obedient servants. They basically, one of the guys cut off his finger just because of like, hey, I'm gonna cut it off and you can't, you know, like, hey, you just, he will stand here and just bleed if I don't order him to take care of it. And it's like, okay, now go get it bandaged up. So he basically wants to do that to Bruce. I guess he saw the potential inside of Bruce to be the greatest talent that's been around, like, because he basically wants Bruce's power. I mean, I guess the name of Bruce Wayne, because if he has control of, like, one of the most powerful families in Gotham, he can kind of make Bruce do whatever he wants to. I guess it seems kind of interesting because it seems like, well, that's kind of the whole point of having clone Bruce, but then I guess this makes him a little, I don't know, a little more malleable, I guess. I don't really understand, like, why. I guess, because clone Bruce would only be temporary, but it's like if you got Strange, couldn't Strange help him? But I think I brought it up last episode. The fact is that Strange working with the court and they never cured him means maybe they can't, even though he cured Fish when it seemed like, I mean, maybe their cases are a little bit different, but nevertheless, it seems that that's what this is all about. Because, like, the way he puts it to Bruce is because it's like he reveals himself to be, like, obviously the leader of the Court of Owls. No surprise there. And then he ends up, it's like, hey, like, you guys went out of your way to hire someone to basically chain of command, and it's like some people within the court are responsible for the Wayne's, Martha and Thomas's murder, and he ends up killing one of the Court of Owl members because it's like, oh, the Waynes were going to expose us and stuff like that. So he seems like that's his main reason behind all this. It's like, because he brought up before that he wants revenge against Gotham, which is like, I don't know whether this is all tied together or whether he's just using this as an excuse. Like, what started kind of going through my mind is like, it wouldn't happen to be the chance that he's actually Bruce's grandfather that, Bruce has been unaware of, has been alive and everything. I mean, there's still the possibility of that, but I feel like, I mean, as we can see, families are deeply tied to the court and everything. We saw it with, Gordon's dad as well as his uncle. So, I mean, maybe at the top of this is, well, no, 'cause I feel like he wouldn't have said that, like he wouldn't talk about them so detachedly, like, oh, you killed the Waynes. Like, I feel like he would have brought up, because the fact of the matter is he's still kind of keeping his identity secret because he hasn't even mentioned his name and stuff like that. So it does beg the question, like, who is he really? Could he be Bruce's grandfather or what? Or, because before I kept throwing out, they did like, oh, maybe he just shows Ra's al Ghul or Ra's al Ghul, but which is like, obviously him being associated with the court makes me think that's not probably true at all. I mean, granted, it still could be a possibility, but I think it's very less likely at this point in time. So it does beg the question, who is he as the head of the court? Maybe he's connected, like maybe he has a title that actually fits along with that. Maybe he is like, I don't know, like Owlman or something. I don't know. I'm not saying that's it, but maybe it's something connected to the like Court of Owls, that his name, like what he represents as its leader. I mean, how do you become the leader? The fact of the matter is he has to be from a very powerful family because all the members of the court are from powerful families. Like Catherine was like from one of the eldest families there. So it's like for him to be at the top means he has to be part of one of the oldest families. And I think, I don't know. We'll just have to kind of see what this means going forward. Like what exactly he has planned for Bruce being the weapon that he needs. So it's like, and what that really entails. It's kind of interesting, the whole Selena and clone Bruce thing, because the words that come out, it's like, Selena, you're alive. He's like, actually, I'm kind of happy you're alive. It's like, if you're happy she's alive, maybe you shouldn't have killed her, tried to kill her in the first place. Granted, in his mind, it's just like, I can't let you ruin all this. Because once again, like, this is all he has. This is his purpose. This is who he's supposed to be. This is the role he's meant to play. But still, that doesn't, change what he did. And Alfred and Selena both tried to go at him, but sadly he ended up getting away. It was kind of interesting seeing Alfred like go at him like that, because it's almost weird, because it's like, man, you've never, because it's like, even though that's not Bruce, it's still weird seeing him and like beat on Bruce like that. But granted, the clone doesn't feel anything, which is very, very lucky for you when it comes to fights and stuff like that, because you're not slowed down by pain, which I guess arguably can almost be like, once again, like, well, I'm like, the fact that you're kind of making this Talon, making Bruce into a Talon, which is basically the same thing as what clone Bruce is. But once again, maybe it's the whole longevity situation of like, you're not going to be around that long, so maybe that's a key factor. I don't know. Maybe because it's something he needs specifically from Bruce. Like, he needs someone from the Wayne family, from the Wayne bloodline. Maybe it's something in his blood he needs. Again, just stuff we'll kind of have to wait and see. But obviously Selena's not willing to help out in this episode, which like pisses Alfred off. He's like, really? After everything Bruce has done for you and everything, he's been your friend and everything. Which Selena's just kind of like, the fact of the matter is it won't do anything for me. It's like, what will I kind of get out of it? And he's like, oh, like the fact of the matter is you're still mad because he lied about your mom and stuff. It's like, it's not his fault that your mom ended up being, he wanted to protect you, and like, he's just looking out for you because he cares about you. But the fact of the matter is apparently but sadly it seems like that's not, a mutual feeling. So it's obviously like, Selena wants to help, because obviously she wouldn't have gone through all this trouble to, try and warn Alfred and everything. It's like, yeah, she cares about Bruce, and obviously she cares about Alfred, but I guess it's like, her pride is just kind of getting in the way because she's like, no, like, you know, I tried to tell you guys about getting involved in this whole situation. Even if that was the case, you still helped them with the whole situation. Nevertheless, it's showing you care about Bruce. I guess it's just one of those situations where you're mad at someone and you just kind of tend to forget like why you were mad at them in the first place. I mean, she knows exactly why she was mad at him, but it's like, is that really like something that you should be really holding a grudge against him at this point in time? Because it's like, you know how Bruce is, and the fact of the matter is all he does is worry and care about people. That's kind of like, for some people, they might look at it as a weakness, as this guy like looks at it as a weakness, but his feelings and stuff just make him him, you know? And it's like, because that's what I'm like, that's the whole sad situation. Like I said before, like without pain, like everything associated with it, it's because of what Bruce, like Bruce's kindness is one of his strongest suits. And now that that's been taken away from him because he's just kind of numb on the inside now because of what that guy does. And it's like, that, I don't know, it's very sad when you actually break it down like that. Obviously, he also crossed paths with the Executioner in this episode, wearing this suit of armor and that axe hand. Trying to execute, well, obviously being judge, jury, and executioner, putting Jim on trial and everything. His version of a trial. Still believing that the fact is the blood is like, oh, you think it's such an evil thing. I mean, because I kind of also agree with Jim. It's like, you're willing to do this. It's like, oh, you're coming after me. But it's like, what about the court? They're going to hurt and kill a lot of innocent people. But I guess it's specifically because Jim used the words like, oh, they're going to use the blood to poison people. Like, they're going to spread the virus. And he's like, oh, you think the virus is still a bad thing? It's like, everyone being infected is a good thing. The people will kind of, you know, rise up. I guess in his mind, maybe people will rise up together and end up fighting injustice or something like that. You know, where my mindset is. I mean, two interesting points. Not just with that. When it comes to technically tied to him is like when they were interrogating Catherine and you had Alfred stabbing her in the hand. Wasn't expecting that. I mean, but to be fair, it's like, you know, Bruce is in danger. He knows that now, especially because it feels even more frustrating for him because, like, you know, because even Harvey brought it up. It's how do you not know he was gone for days? It's like there's this whole clone situation. Wait, did you say clone? It's like, yeah, and it's like, dude. You know, that has to frustrate him even more. Like, Bruce has been gone for how long? Not for good knows how long he's been gone. And for Alfred, as like his guard, you know, and the protector and guardian, it's like that's kind of like a big. He's like, I failed, you know, Bruce. So I think that hits him even harder. There's even a point where it's like Selena was out, like, oh, how do you know that Bruce is like, my boy is alive? And it's like, that's so sweet to hear you say those words exactly, like my boy, because Bruce is like a son to him. It's like he knows Bruce isn't his son, but he is like a son to him because he's been by Bruce's side ever since he was young. But obviously, he's been part of the Wayne family for a long time, and having to be by Bruce's side through the difficult time of like losing his parents and stuff like that, and everything that they've been through together. So. But also the fact is that Catherine's dead. I mean, mainly that was her own fault for kind of not saying the right words because she was like, stop with all this business and, you know, basically trying to get justice to this nonsense. And he was like, nonsense. And then I was like, actually had to rewind it because I'm like, did he slice her throat? Oh, no, he didn't just slice her throat. He literally cut her head off. Wow. Which, you know, Gordon was able to blow his hand off, the one with the axe. And I was like, the fact is he keeps taking it on and off. I'm like, something's going to happen to make it so that's a permanent thing. And it's like, obviously, like, I'm granted the axe is gone now, but I'm sure he'll get another one and it will just be like a permanent thing, especially now that he's missing his hand. Which, granted, we do find out near the end of the episode he did escape. So it's like, even Harvey's like, really? The fact is we just caught him and now he's back out on the streets again. It's like, does this not, they keep sucking anymore? I also appreciate kind of a single line that was just like, the fact is, it's like, okay, we need to find out, okay, here, this might be where we can find the bomb that they're setting up because it's such a big facility and stuff like that. Yeah, Lucius said we should check the basement. It's like, oh, well, you know, Harvey's like, ooh, well, Lucius said we should check the basement. We should check the basement. It's like, Gordon's like, okay, what's your problem with him? It's like, he's smarter than me. And it's like, I love that you're so petty, Harvey. But don't worry, you know, Harvey, I'm sure in his mindset would be like, well, Lucius has all the smarts, but obviously I had the charisma and good looks, you know, so obviously continuing there, they're trying to track down this bomb. I mean, now that Catherine is gone, it does make you want, I mean, she wasn't the leader, so I don't know if that would necessarily escalate their plans a lot. It does make you wonder what was the court going to do with Penguin and Ed. I mean, it seemed like, because even Catherine was like, oh, we have some use for him, but it's like, what were you planning on doing? I mean, now that he has escaped, I mean, maybe they were planning on keeping them nearby so that they wouldn't be affected by this whole situation, keep them in reserve, because it's like, oh, because remember, like, Catherine took an interest in Penguin initially when he was like married and everything, because they actually crossed paths like in one episode. So like they kept an eye on him as Mirror because they saw potential, like, oh yeah, like help rebuild Gotham and everything like that. So. And then finally, like, there's the whole aspect of Lee in this episode. Obviously, like, she has an interesting conversation with the Mad Hatter. He kind of brings up something because she's trying to understand. It's like, out of anybody, why'd you give the virus to Mario? Why not me? Because obviously you wanted to punish Jim and everything. And he's like, well, the fact of the matter is, it's because at that dinner table, I saw the look in your eye. It wasn't that you loved Jim Gordon. It wasn't like you loved him. At that moment, it was a love situation. You currently had loved him at that moment in time. And because of that, it's like Jim Gordon doesn't deserve love after the whole Alice situation. It's like, oh, he took away my love. And I took away his, because it's like, he knew that poisoning Mario, that basically things would escalate and get to the point that they did, and that eventually Lee would hate him, even though like Jim would ultimately be doing whatever he could to protect her, so in a way he ends up turning it on her. It's like, hey, the fact of the matter is, if you want to blame someone, it's not my fault, it's not Jim's fault, that technically it's your fault, because if you weren't so still in love with Jim, I would have never noticed that, and Mario wouldn't have been a victim. Maybe you would have simply been the victim of it all. So, and I'm sure that just kind of complicated things even more for her, because now it's just like she's mad at Jim, she's mad at the Mad Hatter, and now she's mad at herself because she's still mad at Jim for everything. Because she's like, oh, the fact of the matter is, because it seems like she almost might have the same mindset as the Court of Owls, because clearly like Lee doesn't really know everything that's going on. At this point in time, I don't think she really cares. I mean, it's to the point like Jim could fill her in and everything, but it's like, no, it's not really worth going into at this point. For her, she's just like, I just want to move on, get some stuff and leave. But it's like, because on some level she still blames Jim for everything, because it's like, the fact of the matter is, you corrupted this town, you corrupted this station. Like, you're not a good guy, Jim. You're not paying for your crimes. And that's what's more messed up to her. Is like the fact of the matter, all the evil stuff that you've done. But the thing is, like, everything he's done that is considered evil. Like, I mean, I'm not saying it like everything he's done has not. There are consequences, and Jim has had to pay the price in the past, whether Lee really realizes it or not. I mean, biggest price he's had to pay is her and the baby. I mean, mainly that was kind of his own situation, being stuck in his own head and everything, but still, like, and even this battle right here, he ends up finding out, it cost him his dad's life, and also his uncle sacrificed himself to put Jim in a position to do all this. I mean, granted, Jim might be, I mean, now that I'm thinking about it, Jim might be able to go back into the organization. I mean, who's to say the Court of Owls knows what Catherine knew? Maybe Catherine kept that to herself. It's like, I'm gonna handle this situation myself. So maybe the rest of the court doesn't know about her, but we'll see going forward. But we do see Lee injecting herself at the end of the episode, which I don't completely understand why she's doing that. I guess it's like, because obviously she had that dream in the beginning about Mario giving her his blood in a wine glass, and she's drinking and everything. And I guess it's just like, I guess she wants to understand herself, like, where Barnes is coming from and what Mario was going through and stuff like that. I mean, what does this mean going forward? Because Jim's not going to kill her. I'm sure possibly, you might have Lucius kind of working on a cure. I would assume so, because he had the blood samples and everything, trying to test everything, just in case the bomb goes off that people can get cured and everything. So hopefully they'll be able to get one for Lee, but we would just kind of have to wait and see like how that all plays out, because it's like, I don't, like I said, I don't understand 100% of why she did that. Maybe it's a sense of like she needed something else, like other than what she's feeling. It's like, I guess in her mind, it's like she has to pay for what she did, her part in it, letting what the Mad Hatter say kind of get in her head, and so now she has to do whatever it takes to make up for her crimes, and that's basically leading to Mario's death and stuff like that, taking responsibility for it. So it's like, only way to make things fair is to take that upon herself like Mario did. I don't know. Maybe feel anything other than what she's feeling, So, like I said, a lot of interesting things went down in this episode, and I guess we're really just kind of, to see where things go, we'll just have to wait till the next episode to see how they all play out. And now moving on to the season finale of Supergirl, a fantastic all around great finale, great episode of Supergirl. I love the fact of the matter is, like, obviously you got Kara going up against Clark, which obviously we found out how, Rhea got him under her control. It was like silver kryptonite, which is like I keep wondering about that. Like, is that a big thing in the comic books or not? Because like Smallville is the only show, I've referenced this when I was talking about the first season. Smallville's the only Superman canon that I'm ever familiar with that has kryptonite other than green. But obviously in this one it's silver. So basically, it makes him see a certain thing, which he saw Zod, which makes him think, like, the fact is you went out of your way to... I feel like they could have picked anyone. But I mean, I guess it makes sense Zod, because Zod is, like, his equal, because it's like, oh, you've got the same powers as me. I mean, granted, we don't know what Zod's done in this particular iteration of, like, the Superman universe. Like, I mean, at least like this Superman canon, because we know all the destruction caused in Man of Steel and stuff like that. He's not obviously Man of Steel is its own thing, so I'm pretty sure it's a situation where Zod is like in the Phantom Zone, especially considering the fact that Clark is like, oh no, like basically Reyes like, oh, he's in his mind as like, oh, he won't let you hurt anyone else, so he'll go beyond where he ever has before. So it seems like it is a situation where it's like, I mean, we don't know what Zod's done in the past to push Clark to go to such like extents of fighting him like that, almost practically wanting to kill him. So, but the fact that he went and set that up makes me think, might gonna be seeing him in the future, like, at least I hope so. That'd be kind of interesting. Also, what's up with his eyes? Are his eyes naturally like that, or is that just kind of the effect of the silver kryptonite that it kind of reflects in his eyes because that's where Clark is looking, or does Zod's eyes automatically look like that? But the fact of the matter is, it turned into a full-on brawl between him and Kara, just flying all over the place, massive destruction. Obviously, he's very isolated, but still, then it turns into like a slug match between them and everything. It was like so badass. And Kara kicked Clark's ass, and even he comments on it later on. He's like, the fact is, Kara, like, I wasn't weakened by the kryptonite. That was me at full strength, and you beat me. It's like, so basically the idea is, hey, we need to settle this situation. The best way to settle that is an all-out, like a one-on-one fight between Kara and Rhea. That will be the one fight that decides the future of Earth, whether Daxam gets it or whether, they leave and never come back. Which I really appreciated. Like, obviously, Kat and Clark in the same scene again. She's just like, oh, I just need me a Clark bar. And she's just like dolling herself up a little bit. Like I said, it's so interesting because she's like a teenager in love, like kind of right in front of her crush and everything, trying to feel. She's like, oh man, oh, you're here reporting, huh? You must love danger, which I still can't understand why you're with Lois Lane then. And just Clark's kind of like, sure. And then when he's leaving, she's like, I can just imagine underneath those glasses, he takes them off. I bet you he's a tiger in bed. And then Kara's just like, and walks away underneath her breath. Is like, oh God, I hope Rhea kills me. It's like, she's literally there in front of you telling you, man, your cousin must be like great in a sack or something like that. Essentially, that's got to be so weird, because not only is that your cousin, but it's also your technically your boss. I mean, granted, she was still his boss. She was still Kara's boss at the time she was talking about him like that. But it's so interesting that she has that demeanor like that, which I really appreciate. Just that you see that side of Kat like that. But like I said, it was just a very action-packed episode where we basically had like Kara going up against Rhea, then slamming through buildings and stuff like that, not holding anything back in these fights. I even really thought was interesting the fact is that she bleeds kryptonite because the whole Daxam situation. It makes you wonder how many other Daxamites are like that they actually, like, I guess like maybe during, obviously this is all because of Krypton exploding and everything, so maybe like residual kryptonite flowed into her body and maybe like a shard got stuck and it kind of flooded her blood system. But it's like the more she bled, the more she would weaken Kara. So that was just kind of an interesting thing like that to me, that being a whole concept. I mean, obviously, like Rhea being the cheater that she is, it's like the fact of the matter is this is supposed to be combat, because obviously Kara was winning and, I mean, I guess you also got to give props to Rhea for putting up such a fight, because it's like, I guess she kind of got quickly acclimated to the whole sun situation too, because like we never really seen her displaying the fact is that she had superhuman strength. I mean, because the last time her and Kara fought, she used the daggers, and after that was also like they were on the ship. Which, well, I was about to say like the first time they were on the ship, they were in outer space. So I don't obviously. I mean, does the sun's radiation reach you like off planet? I mean, I don't know. But nevertheless, like Rhea kind of handled her own. I guess it's a combination of her Daxam training plus the fact is that she's got these super abilities and stuff like that. I mean, the point I was trying to make is like, because obviously that played an element of Man of Steel, because the fact of the matter is Zod and the other Kryptonians weren't acclimated to Earth, so basically them getting all these powers and stuff was a little overwhelming. But then again, Rhea's been on the planet for at least some time, or like that time she was with Lena, so I guess she kind of readjusted. It doesn't seem like, obviously, like, you know, Mon-El kind of got adjusted to it quickly. It doesn't seem like there's a situation of like, oh yeah, like, it takes its toll. Like, it takes, like, obviously Kara kind of had to learn how to control her abilities, but I guess at the same time, when you're not really worried, I mean, I guess given enough time, you kind of learn how to adjust. You know, I mean, who's to say how long Rhea was really on Earth before she even met with Lena, but then afterwards when they were doing that project together. So, but obviously this is a situation where obviously Mama, Luther, Lillian pops up and she's like, oh yeah, I told you so. How could you work with her and blah, blah, blah. And Lena's like, the fact of the matter is, it showed you how much of a bad parent you are. The fact is that you never really praised me. You were just never a mother. The fact of the matter is I had to seek that encouragement from a complete stranger that basically put us in this situation in the first place. So technically this is your fault, Mom. But basically what it all came down to was a box and finding out what was in that box. The box is a special device, you know, because obviously this is what she stole from that facility when she was framing Lena for being her accomplice in the whole situation. Like the box she got from Lex's lab at that point in time was like, it basically was a device to spread kryptonite into the air. Like obviously it wouldn't be enough to affect a normal human being, but it'd be enough to make it impossible for, you know, because it flow into the air. Particles of it will exist in the air, making it impossible for any Kryptonians to exist. That was Lex's ultimate weapon against Superman and obviously now Supergirl. But now they repurpose it, so now instead of spreading kryptonite, it will spread lead, making it impossible for any Daxam to stay on Earth, for any Daxam to ever come back, because if they try to invade, they would automatically die. Which also means Mon-El won't be able to stay either. It's kind of a last resort. Kara didn't want to pull it, but she didn't have any choice, because it's like, Rhea said it during the fight, it's like, even if you win, the fact of the matter is, we will still keep coming. Even if I die, we will still keep coming and coming. There's no end to this. And so, at the end of the day, she had to press the button, even though she knew what it meant. Like, even Mon-El was like, I don't care. If it comes down to it, I don't want to be the reason why this planet suffers. And so Kara presses the button, which it does end up killing Rhea, which she's like, Mon-El, help me, won't you save me? And he's like, really? Like you helped Dad? And so she ended up, it's kind of interesting, like, I guess, I wonder, is that what it looks like when a Kryptonian dies from kryptonite? It's like, holy crap, like, or is that just a Daxam, like, but the fact that she turned to dust and everything and crumbled like that, which is sad. You're kind of hoping, I mean, I guess on some level I was hoping Mon-El would get her out of there in time, but I guess it's like, because I think at least all the other Daxamites who had their armor on, she was kind of breathing everything in directly. So I'm sure there were still ramifications for even all the Daxamites who left. But for, you know, Rhea, it's like she hadn't accommodated to Earth yet. So at least she didn't have kind of an immunity kind of built up for being on Earth and everything. So it struck her pretty quickly. And she ended up dying. Which is like, you didn't even see Mon-El really be sad about it or whatever. Because I guess at a point, like, to him, it was like, that's not my mom anymore. I mean, I hope on some level, maybe he could look past it and be like, no, that's not, I mean, maybe that would ruin his image of his mom forever. It's like, this is who my mom was, and that's how she always was. And, you know, like, I love her and cared about her at one point in time. It's like, I wonder, will that be erased, or will he just keep the memory separate? Like, this wasn't a woman, this wasn't my mom, this is a woman who looked like my mom was someone else. But like I said, it's like, it seems like that's who she always was. So, like I said, you kind of understand where she was coming from, but at the same time, just doing what she did, it's like, killing her own husband, willing to, like, do whatever it took, you know, like, using her son, like, a whole situation of, like, oh, yeah, make him and Lena have a baby, get married and everything, oh, you unite together, you know, just forcing her will upon other people. But this whole situation did mean that Mon-El and Kara would have to say goodbye, and it's like, it sucks, because for Kara, she was like, she ended up talking to Clark about it, because the fact of the matter, she's like, she has everything. She has friends. She has her job. She has being Supergirl. She has Mon-El. She's happy, you know. But then, like, I mean, obviously, as we see later on, it gets stripped away from her. But Clark was telling her, like, that's what you fight for. You always keep those people that you care about close to your heart. Realize that they're what you're fighting for, and they're kind of by your side through it all. And it's like, she had that happiness, and now it's like stripped away. Obviously, like, her and Mon-El deeply loved each other, but it's like he has to leave the planet, because if he stays, he will die. So that that sucks big time. Obviously, Mono kind of get like as he was drifting off into space, there was like a portal to open up. So I don't know, because obviously he can't go back to Daxam. Like even if he found his way back to Daxam, he couldn't go because Daxamites refer to him as a traitor. Like when he was fighting someone on the lower streets, they were like, "Oh, traitor!" And it's like he can't go back to Daxam now because I'm sure all of them have plagued him as a traitor. Then so there's no hope of like going back and trying to fix things because if they spot him, they might kill him. I mean, that also begs the question, what will Daxam do? I'm sure there's probably like some council that will take over, but maybe they'll elect a new king or queen. I mean, it seems like a bloodline thing, but maybe that's not the case. Maybe this type I mean, it wouldn't be a king or queen type of situation. It was like an electoral type of thing. So maybe, I don't know, somebody's going to be voted in because it's like, what does that mean for the Daxams? It's not like they can come back and get the revenge. Like, oh, you killed our queen. It's like, well, we can never go back to your planet. Not unless they find a way around that whole lead in the air situation, but, we'll see. But Mono it looked like a wormhole opened up. My brain immediately goes like, does this mean Mono's kind of going to a different world? Does this mean we're going to see him pop up on some different Earth or something like that? I'm very curious. Because obviously he could, like, because I brought it up. I knew it from the very beginning. I was like, yep, Mono's not going to stay. Like, they're going to do something to kind of take him away. Granted, I thought it was going to be a situation where Mono left of his own choice. Like, oh, I'll lead my people, now that my mom's kind of out of the picture, I will lead my people on the right path. It's like, no, he was forced to leave. During the circumstances came up and now, like, he had to leave Earth, and now he can never come back because it's all in the air. So, like, there's no coming back from that now. So not unless they find a device that makes, I mean, granted, because if they found a device to kind of reverse it, pull all that would only mean that Daxam would be able to come back. So, and Mondale wouldn't want that. He wouldn't want to come back knowing that it meant his people would strike again. So, I don't know. But to me, that seems like, oh, maybe this means Mondale ends up on a different Earth. Maybe we'll see him kind of pop up on Flash. I mean, obviously, this week's the Flash finale. So, I mean, it's not even going to be like that. But still, maybe that'll be something we see in the future, like, with that. I mean, I don't know. We'll just kind of have to wait and see on that. So, I mean, maybe it just means he ends up on a different planet, because I highly doubt we're done with his story. We also did have Magan and come back. Obviously, the White Martians aren't going to be the issue because last episode I presented, I was like, oh, maybe we're setting up the White Martians to be enemies, but it's like, no, the White Martians have been like some of them, not all of them, but some of them are on Magan's side, and she shows up. Her and John are kind of hitting it off, which kind of deters away from because initially I knew Magan, obviously Miss Martian and Martian Manhunter as kind of family, so it was a little weird for me. I think they kind of I didn't know which direction they were going to take the relationship. Obviously, it's like everyone's different interpretation of different material, so this is their take on it, Magan and John being a thing. I mean, because for that symbolizes a lot too. Obviously, it symbolizes the same thing as John and Magan in Young Justice, for example. It's like, oh yeah, they're family, even though they're different. It's like, oh, he's a green Martian, she's a white Martian. Even then, that doesn't matter. So it's the same principle. But obviously, it's just a different relationship that they have. So it's more of an intimate one in a romantic sense. So she did say that she was going to be staying on Earth for a while, but eventually she's going to go back to try and still help it out with this whole White Martian situation. So, I mean, like I said, that kind of deters away from what I was thinking. I was like, obviously you're going to set up the White Martian. I mean, sure, there's going to be probably the more extremists that were like, oh, blah, 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 unless you're White Martian, you need to be wiped out type of situation. So maybe that'll be something we'll deal with in the future. She didn't pop up in this episode, but I'm very curious to see about the president storyline. I'm sure that's going to play some part. Because obviously we know a lot of people, because at the end of the episode, they end up bringing up the fact is on the news and stuff that Lillian gets praised for everything she's done. Granted, I think the world knows about her being a part of Cadmus, right? I think maybe they don't. No, because she was publicly arrested and everything, so I think they know about her in Cadmus. But it's like, oh, obviously there's going to be some people like, oh, hey, she's very anti-alien. Other people like, yeah, she's anti-alien. So like I said, I figure this whole situation will kind of bolster her position, and that definitely will be something going forward. I'm sure we're going to have to, deal with, so. But something else that came about this episode, obviously there's a whole conversation between Kat and Kara, because Kara brings up the whole boyfriend situation, obviously not going into too many details, but the fact of the matter is that, and Kat said something I thought was very interesting. I don't know, it's something I kind of agree with. It's she was basically women are very, have a different strength than guys in the sense of women aren't afraid to be in touch with their emotions. Guys, there's a whole machismo type of situation of oh, you're kind of a punk if you're open with your emotions, stuff like that. Not saying every guy agrees with that and every guy is like that, but there's that kind of stereotypical stigma about guys like that. But the fact is, women are more in touch with their feelings. Not every woman, but typically that's kind of what she was saying. That basically, like, hey, the fact is, women are stronger because they're not afraid to deal with their emotions, and it's like, and they can get through it. Even though, like, no matter how they're feeling, angry, sad, that eventually they can get through it. They see that they can get through it, and that kind of gives them a different strength that, maybe not necessarily a guy will have. I mean, especially after what Kara did. Like, I mean, it's kind of the general consensus around. It's like, you're strong, Kara, not just in a physical sense. Like, doing what you did, you literally sacrificed your love for the sake of saving the Earth. And even Kara's like, honestly, if it came to saving the world or Lois, I don't know if I would have been able to make that decision. So it just shows you make me humble. That the fact of the matter is that you are a greater hero than I am. That the fact of the matter is that I will ever be, because you were able to do that, sacrifice essentially your heart, which obviously is meant to be a good thing, but at the same time, it's like, you can also see the downside of it just making her feel worse about it. Because at first she's like, oh, stop trying to say that just to make you feel better. It's like, I'm not saying that. Like, I don't think I would have been able to make that choice. The fact is that you were able to, proves how strong you are. Alex is saying the same thing, which, for Kara, it's like, it's also a little heartbreaking because it's like everyone else has got someone, Wynn and Lyra. The fact of the matter is, Alex and Maggie, you also have Clark and Lois. Everyone else is happy, which the fact of the matter is, she's like, I don't want, like, she's talking to Alex and everything. She's like, I don't want you to sacrifice your love. Like, the fact is, because my world stopped, Mon-El, her love and everything is kind of gone now. It's like, don't put your lives on pause for me. But what I will say is, hold on to Maggie and don't let her go, because you never know with these type of situations. Because even if she was having that conversation with Mon-El, she's like, the fact is, I love you. I never said it, and I waited so long to say it, and now this is all there is left is us, and now we have to say goodbye, so that sucks. Because it's literally a situation, because, I mean, it's even worse than season one, because at least season one, she ended it off like, hey, me and Jimmy. Oh, obviously, not so much, obviously, when this, at the beginning of the second season, but still, it kind of ended on a more happy note. But it's like, nope, that kind of got snatched away from her, and now she kind of, having to be the hero, with a broken heart and everything, and it sucks, I mean, because for her, relationships haven't always worked out. Love doesn't necessarily work out for her that way. Like, who else has a similar situation? It's like, there's someone recently that kind of had I'm thinking about, that had like a similar love life type of situation. Like, right, I remember now. It was Live for My Zombie. She has terrible luck when it comes to her love life, because two of her exes are dead, and then there's the whole situation of like, oh yeah, her and Major, then there's that whole situation of Major like possibly dying, or at the very least, not dying. Well, yes, dying, but then forgetting about her and everything, and everyone else once he took the cure, that whole situation. So it's like, God, like, it just sucks. Like, once again, it seems like no superhero can get to happy ending. That's always the thing where it's like, oh, you're like, obviously, Kara dealing with this situation. Obviously, the season finale hasn't happened yet because it happens tomorrow. But it's like Barry's whole situation and Oliver's love life is just kind of like, oh, like him and Felicity, maybe not. It's hard to really say. It seems like that might be on an up and up, but then it's like there's always going to be a down, like just sacrifices that come with being a superhero and stuff like that. It is probably one of those situations where Kara kind of feels I'm sure it's frustrating, because it's like you have to make a decision like that, because it's like you have to sacrifice your own happiness to ensure other people are happy, and maybe on some level that'll be something that Kara has to deal with in the future, is holding in that resentment. Maybe that's just something that happens in between seasons. Maybe it doesn't. I mean, obviously, I don't know if this is getting renewed for a third season. I really hope so, because this is like easily one of my favorite of the superhero TV shows. Like, once again, it's like, it's kind of this and Flash, or obviously, because I love Arrow and DC's Legends of Tomorrow, but it's like, I don't know, Supergirl and like Flash are up there for me. And I think the main reason for that is because like it's more superpower based, where it's like, which I love Arrow, because don't get me wrong, Arrow kind of started this whole Arrowverse situation, but still, like, you're more consistently likely to see superpowers on both Flash and Supergirl, so I think that kind of influences that. So but I really hope it does get renewed for a third season. I don't know how ratings wise this does. I know some people are kind of about this show, which I wish people didn't feel that way. I need to stop hitting my tripod, because that messes with the audio every time I do that. But nevertheless, that's kind of a future Michael problem when he has to edit this. So nevertheless, yeah, I mean, I really love the show. Like, I really liked the first season, and like, I really like the second season too. I'm probably like, I think I probably like season two more. I mean, it's really hard to say because there's like elements of season one that I really like that I want to see more of. Whether or not they'll ever turn into a thing or not, I don't know. There's the whole Lucy storyline with from season one, the whole her and Hank running the DEO that kind of disappeared. So I'm sure, Red Tornado 2, then there's the whole Max Lord situation. A lot of that stuff from season one kind of got left off. I mean, who's to say they won't bring it back in some form in season three or not? Maybe they just kind of had to get their ducks in a row. I don't know. I'm very curious to see what this storyline is that they're setting up for the third season, where it's like, oh, there's actually another child that was brought to Earth. Or at the very least was sent off during Krypton's destruction, which apparently was 35 years ago. That's so interesting to me. Because, I mean, I don't know. It's just kind of interesting to me that it has been 35 years. I mean, to be fair, the whole, Kara was trapped in a Phantom Zone type of situation. So, I mean, obviously there's that. But it's like, makes you wonder whether there be kind of anything else that come from that. I feel like there might have been, and I'm just kind of forgetting about it. But, immediately my brain goes to Doomsday. Because I don't know if Doomsday is an established thing in this or not, but this is kind of based on, I don't really know that much about Doomsday's storyline. Only, obviously, I know Doomsday from Batman v Superman, and I know Doomsday from Smallville. But, basically, to my understanding, he was created. He's like an experiment that was done on Krypton, so obviously he shares kind of powers similar to a Kryptonian. So when he comes here, kind of raining destruction, because they end up saying oh, he'll go there and he will reign. So it's immediately my brain goes to Doomsday, but maybe we'll deal with something else too. Maybe something else will come about it, but we'll just kind of have to wait and see about that. Like I said, a very good season finale, and once again, just not just a season finale, a very good episode of Supergirl. Like I said, ended on some very sad terms. And also another thing too is about where Lena's going to stand, because obviously she still doesn't know about the whole Kara and Supergirl situation. It kind of came up where it's oh yeah, did you know that Kara was dating Mon-El, and then Lillian kind of gives her a look and then Clark and Kara got to look to each other, and she just kind of lets the conversation go. But it's obviously going forward, at some point in time, Lena will find out the truth. And the question is, how will she react? Will she go all Lex Luthor, or will she kind of just be Lena? Because that's a big... because that's a very distinct part of her storyline too, is the fact is that she tries so hard not to be a Luthor that she doesn't follow in her brother's footstep. Because that's the whole reason why she bonded with Rhea, because it's Rhea didn't see her as oh, you're Lex's sister. It's no, you're Lena. She saw her as Lena. And I think obviously that's why she likes Kara too, because Kara always sees her as Lena, not as a Luthor. It's Luthor is my last name. It doesn't mean that's who I am. I mean, that's the reason why Lena has gone and done as much as she has, trying to better the Luthor name. So obviously that's going to be a big story. And like I said, I hope on everything that Lena does take it as a good thing. And she's oh yeah, you're you, and that's all you will ever be. It doesn't matter whether you're Supergirl or Kara. I understand why you had to keep your secret, and she's all fine with it. So, two final notes. I kind of forgot to bring these up earlier. One, love Win kind of geeking out. It's oh my god. He's almost kind of getting weak-kneed when he meets Clark, and he's yeah, I know you don't remember. He's oh yeah, of course. You're Win. You do this, did this, and blah 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 blah. And Win's oh my god. He's yeah. And then you see him mouthing the word. I think I caught the tail end of it, but it looked like he was mouthing the words, "I love you." It's just could you not nerd out like that, Win? It's so interesting. He kind of gets weak in the knees when it comes to Superman, and you kind of have Cat kind of having the same effect when it comes to Clark. That's just so interesting to me. And also the fact is that she does in fact know, because at the end, when Kara's about to go off save the day, she goes, go get him, Supergirl. And it's so when did you figure it out? How long have you really, really known? Is it something you thought about, maybe since her time away has kind of put more clarity in her brain, or what? I'm very curious. Because at first, it seemed the only person she didn't have figured out was Kara, but it's because you figured out Jimmy. I don't know. I don't know if she's really figured Clark out or not. Maybe that's not the case. I mean, really, I haven't seen her interact with Superman, only Clark. And she figured out Barry pretty quickly, both, him and Jane. So it's how long did it take her to figure out Kara? So, I mean, that's another question too. Will we be seeing Cat around a lot more if there's a third season? I think, like I said, at the end of the day, that comes down to Callista Flockhart. Her whole, obviously she has her specific reasoning for why like she wasn't a big part of the show this season, which is like I've kind of talked about in the past, which is like it's her own business whether she's a part of the show or not. She'd want to be, I'm sure, but it's like other things and obligations. So it's kind of like I'd love her to be part of the show again. Also curious what that would mean for Jimmy. And obviously we didn't see Snapper, which you did see constantly hear her kind of referencing like, yo, where's Snapper at? So. But yeah, I mean, to be honest, like I said, I really hope this does get renewed for a third season because I'd love to see what they would do with a third season. And now moving on to this week's episode of Lucifer, a very, very good episode where we had a very interesting development because obviously there's a whole dealing of trying to find out this third piece that might be connected to the Flaming Sword. But Charlotte did this whole situation where she paid some money to a guy that she's a client to. Guy kind of left with the money and everything. When they're like, Lucifer and Amenadiel are kind of like, I kind of had to pause to correct myself on that because I'm like, I always say Amenadiel, but I'm going to try and say it more properly because I'm one of those people that's very anal about names and stuff like that. So it's like, oh, maybe it's kind of me it's a whole thing. Moving on. But they're like, Mom, you do realize you just got conned. It's like, what? No, he's just going to come back, isn't he? I don't think so. Go chase him down, find out he's murdered. And it's like, okay, no. The suitcase is going for all our money. The fact is we're no closer to finding this thing. Even if he really had it or not, we're not really sure. It's like, okay, so what we're going to do is we need to turn this into an investigation. Oh, we can help. Luckily, Lucifer works as a detective. So basically, doing their thing, Charlotte and Lucifer position it so that Chloe takes on the case, and it's basically this dude, and his name is Zeke. He's connected to this lady Bianca, who's basically connected to drugs, weapons, and selling, and I think smuggling people, stuff like she's a very bad lady. She's connected to a lot of stuff, and also her son named Chet, who does music and stuff like that. But it's kind of an interesting thing where Charlotte and Lucifer kind of work together. She's like, oh, this is the perfect opportunity to work my son. He's like, oh, God. Obviously, like, she kind of worms her way into the investigation and stuff like that. Which is kind of interesting that when it was all said and done, like, the fact is Chloe was like, honestly, I didn't mind it too much finding out, working with Charlotte and everything. I was like, obviously, she's kind of a pain, but at the same time, it's like, oh, she's pretty awesome and everything. Especially when the lie comes up, it's like, Charlotte's like, she's like, Lucifer, she told me the truth. He's like, well, I highly doubt it. It's like, no, she told me. It's like, what did she tell you? It's like, that she's your stepmom. It's like, oh. It's like, it never once crossed my mind to be like, that's actually a very plausible lie. Because even if you're like, oh, she's super young to have sons like, Amenadiel and Lucifer, but at least you could be like, oh yeah, she's like their stepmom, she was coming, and it still kind of fits the same role and everything. Because Lucifer's like, because Chloe's like, why didn't you tell me before? And Lucifer's like, I don't really know how to put it. It was very complicated, which it is, but it's like stepmom it's a perfect excuse. Never once would have crossed my mind. Oh yeah, like that's a simple lie like that. Because it's hard to really put into words their relationship. Because even Dan starts asking Amenadiel about it later on, and it's like, I don't know, there's this weird thing between you, Lucifer, and Charlie. He's like, oh God, no, it's nothing like that. We don't have that type of relationship and everything. But it's like, now it makes things a little less awkward, because now Chloe's like, that's why every time you were talking about, like me alluding to the fact is that y'all had sex or something like that, that you were just so disgusted by it and everything, and why you kind of are so mad when it comes to Charlotte in general. It is kind of interesting that she did kind of take him, like, in Lucifer almost like, whoa, you're taking her side of this? It's like, oh yeah, all the stuff her ex-husband, your dad put her through and everything, and it's like, Lucifer's almost like, you're taking her side? Really? It makes you wonder what else did Charlotte say in that conversation besides that, so. I also did like the joke that Chloe's like, Dan, if you and her actually did get married, that would actually make you Lucifer's dad. That's kind of weird to think about, and it really is. Like, dude, that's really messed up when you really start thinking about it too much. But obviously, like, it was kind of an interesting turn of events with this case, because it turns out, like, it's kind of interesting because you find out who the killer was immediately. It was her son, Chet. Her son's just wanting to prove himself. It's like, mom keeps him out of the business and stuff like that. I don't know whether it's because she thinks he's a complete and utter idiot, or whether she just wanted her. It seems like it might be that. But I was thinking, like, oh, maybe there's other side of it where it's like, oh yeah, she just didn't want her son to kind of get caught up in that world. Maybe it's a combination of the two, actually. But he killed Zeke because he was doing stuff behind your back, which Bianca was like, no, you idiot. He was doing stuff off the side, and I was getting a like 30% cut of it. It's like, oh, well, I wouldn't have killed him if he had actually told me like everything that was up. And also find out that basically he's trying to learn the inner workings of the entire business. So he has it all saved probably on notes and stuff during his phone of how the whole operation works, how everything kind of fits together. So very, very idiotic on his part. I do appreciate when Chloe got busted. They're like, oh, why are you here? And she's like, y'all don't recognize your face. Like, it's because I love Chet's music. It's like, oh my God, you're so good. You're so talented. It's like, she's kind of rapping some of his music. She's like, yeah. And she's like, oh my God, Chet, you're like, you're just like the best. You're amazing. He's like, yo, I love you. It's just like, I love it. Just her playing that role. But, obviously, but with a little help from Charlotte, they were able to bust the case because it's like, oh yeah, she kind of wore a wire and everything, but obviously, like, she wanted to keep some information safe, so like she messes with the microphone, she spills water on herself so that Chloe doesn't find out, like, oh yeah, they had their dealings and all this because they want to keep their side of this whole case secret and everything. Which I'll kind of get to that soon enough, but some other things I kind of wanted. Well, I'll go ahead and bring it up. Is the whole because a big part of this episode like was, Amenadal feeling inadequate, like whole like complex, obviously being like, oh, Lucifer's the favorite. The fact of the matter is his parents don't listen to him. Like, he's the one. It's like no matter what he does, like Lucifer casts his giant shadow. It's like no matter what he does, he can never, even when he does wrong, he's still the favorite son and everything. And obviously, like, Amenadiel, on so many, not just some, but many levels resents him for it. Because even at the beginning, he's about to say something, but Charlotte just walks off with Lucifer, not paying him any heed at all. Which I also like. This is actually a very good episode of bonding all around. Because obviously you had Dan and Amenadiel bonding, which is like never saw that like like I think they've passed each other, they know each other. They kind of bonded over the fact is that they don't like Lucifer. He's like, don't worry, like if it came down to it, like Dan's like, I like you better than your brother, so you don't have to worry about that. Then there's like Ella and Charlotte kind of do a little bonding. Like Ella is like, yeah, you're so right. The fact of the matter is we haven't done any bonding. We haven't really gotten the opportunity to really know each other. Just trying to go in for a hug, but Charlotte's like, ew, no, don't. Which I love that scene of like when Charlotte's trying to be like, okay, we should all go, like basically go under the cover. Lucifer's like, well, no, you don't do that. Me and the detective will do that. But obviously Charlotte didn't want to do that. She's like, oh, well, me and Dan. And then you have like Lucifer being like, no. And you have, when it was all said and done, everyone was passing names around. Obviously, it ended up being ended up being Chloe and Charlotte. But then you had Ella being like, "Oh yeah, oh no, maybe someone should take Ella with her." Oh really, guys? I'm so honored you bring my name up in this. Obviously, but I'm too busy, so I can't be doing all. It's like I feel so bad for Ella. I'm gonna let her brother kind of pop up in the story because, she did kind of take a phone call from him in that episode. I mean, it seems like a little slight thing, but I brought that up before. I feel like her brother's gonna come up in some shape or form again. I also appreciate the fact that she's like, yeah, if you hurt Dan, I will get someone to break your legs. And so I was like, wow, that darker side of Ella, we've kind of seen her. She referenced before. Because at the end of the day, like, we know bits about Ella that's come up in conversation stuff, but we really don't know that much about her. Maybe that'll be something we'll kind of deal with in the future, but, it's just kind of interesting, She's very protective of the people that she's close to and she cares about. So, I mean, which is good quality all around. But Amenadal kind of got his wish when it was like, oh, mom needs my help because it's like, oh yeah, we need to discover what's in this book. Oh, the book is Sumerian. Because Lucifer apparently can speak all languages, but he can't read them. That's so weird. Like, how do you do that? That's like me learning Japanese, but never learning to speak Japanese. I mean, it's not like a bad thing, but it's just so interesting to me because I guess in my mind, I think both would go hand in hand. I mean, for Lucifer, it's like, it's a bore. Sure, speaking and everything will come in handy, but it's like, when would I really need to read like Sumerian? I can speak it, but who really needs to read it? Which Amenadal takes this opportunity. It's like, okay, steps in. I'm the one. And then Charles like, oh, Amenadal, you're so good. And, had to boost his confidence a little bit. But it turns out that there's a third piece, and that third piece is a key, which automatically he's like, oh, Lucifer, go ahead. It's obviously you. But then he points out, it's like, no, look at you. Because the message was like, oh, yeah, God's favorite son had it. But then it's like, now Amenadal's like, whoa. This now means that Amenadal was the favorite son, which just kind of puts things into perspective. Like, wait, you spent so much time resenting your brother because you're thinking your parents chose him over you, but the fact of the matter is you are like your God's favorite son, which is like, which begs the question, like, why did he lose his powers? Because maybe that's something, because that was a question I brought up that we still don't know the answer to, and maybe next episode will kind of teach us what that's all about or not. But Because that's still a big mystery. Because we know the mystery around Chloe and why she's so important. Because the last episode, if you don't know, I was thinking like, oh, maybe Chloe's like part of the third piece. Maybe she needs to be sacrificed or something. But I mean, obviously she has her own quote unquote part to play in, God's grand scheme and stuff like that. But what that really is, besides being in Lucifer's life, like I said, like I still want to give his dad the benefit of the doubt. It's like, oh yeah, she's in his life because God wants Lucifer to be happy, and he wanted to kind of, like I said, maybe not have gone about it the right way, but he's a loving parent that wants to make sure his son is happy. And maybe this is all kind of maybe doing the same thing with Amenadiel, kind of taking his powers and everything. Maybe that's not him. Maybe there's someone else siphoning away Amenadiel's powers, because he didn't start really losing them until this season. So maybe it has something to do with his mom. Which in this episode, obviously, like they still don't know why, but obviously they're getting very suspicious about why their mom is so eager to get back to heaven and everything. But at the end, we see Chet stabbing her, which I felt like it was going to be I knew Bianca would send somebody after Charlotte didn't realize that she would be sending her own son, but he stabs her. Unfortunately for him, it's like, Charlotte doesn't just die. Like she pulls out the knife and her essence kind of leaks out and it burns his face, like to the point there's nothing but a skull left. As I figured as much, like her leaking, her power leaking is too much, because I guess it's like her heavenly being is too much for anyone to handle. As we saw what a ray of light did to a human, what's going to happen when when her vessel kind of finally gives out, For right now, it seems like it's one little spot, but eventually it's going to be, I mean, now it's even more so another spot, so she's probably going to have to cover that up too. So we would just have to see. Like, is it because obviously, like, it seemed like she was bleeding before. I thought, like, her skin was breaking apart, but it does seem like more, I mean, maybe it's a combination of, like, maybe she got hurt and then that happened that made her realize, oh, this is what happens. Or maybe it's a situation where it's like, it's that, like, her body is naturally cracking and that's what happened, but it's like, now this is adding more to it. Maybe, like, the more parts of her that start leaking out, the more her vessel begins to kind of crack, Stuff like that. I'm very interested about. Another thing in this episode, a big part of the story was Maze and Lucifer, their whole situation, where it's like Maze is super pissed at Lucifer, as to be expected, to the point she's like, ends up finding out that Linda's in big trouble because of her helping Lucifer escape from the whole situation with him and, quote unquote dad last episode with God Johnson and everything, and how that played out, busting him out and everything. She used her own name and stuff, so now the ethics committee, the chairman of the ethics committee is looking into her and stuff like that, determining where she gets to keep her job or not, stuff like that. Lucifer and Maze try to help and everything, but I mean, obviously Lucifer kind of makes it worse by mentioning like, oh yeah, we slept together. Oh, but the fact of the matter is, no, but that, obviously I paid with sex first, but then she was like, oh, that's wrong. So obviously she has strong morals, and then she also saved my life. I mean, granted, she killed me in the first place, but still, which obviously the whole situation was like, obviously Maze is pissed about the Linda situation, but it's also like, to be fair, it's like, it was more so like her projecting, because obviously she was dealing with her own issues, which led to her and Lucifer duking it out, because she ended up referring to Lucifer as like, oh, you're no better than your mom, you just use people, like you don't really get close to people, you don't care about people, they're only important to you if you can use them, which is like makes you just like your parents, the thing that kind of triggered him. So obviously you see them at the end of like, bloodied up and everything, like some of the cement seats and stuff are broken, and it's just like Lucifer's like, all right, we can stop right here because I'll give you time to, catch your breath because you're tired. She's like, no, I'm not tired. You're the one that's tired. And it finally came out. Like at the end of the day, like, Lucifer finally explained, like, this is what this has all been about. And then Maze is like, because she ended up admitting it. She's like, you were going to leave me. As expected. That's what pissed off Maze, is because she thought Lucifer was going to leave her behind. It's like, we're supposed to be in this together, but you were going to leave me behind. But then even when Lucifer explained it to her, it's like, she's like, oh, so you were using me. You needed me to play the part of being super pissed so that it can sell your role of Amenadiel and your mom. And she's like, yeah. And he's like, yeah, I'm glad you get to see the big picture now. But she's like, but that makes matters even worse. Which Linda, she's like, oh, I'm in this whole situation I am right now, so I'm going to give it to you straight. The fact of the matter is, Lucifer, you're being an idiot. You never once thought about how Maze would feel. He's like, what are you talking about? It's like, the fact of the matter is, like, how this will all affect her. He's like, Maze has never cared before, and he looks and he sees that it actually is making her sad. Because the thing, at the end of the day, it's not just Lucifer that's changed since coming to Earth. It's Maze too, but he's been so caught up in his own stuff that he didn't take time to realize, oh, Maze has feelings, she cares and stuff like that, because it's like, because she never cared before, because remember, humans really weren't that important to Maze back in season 1. She's just like, hey, let's get back to hell. But it's something, I mean, they've never really bring it up, but I think, you know, and this kind of sets the mood of being like, sets the tone of like, Lucifer's like her best friend. So it almost felt like being left behind by not just only your best friend, but one of the few people in existence that you really care about. Obviously, there's the whole her and Amenadel situation where it's kind of like it's on the rocks, but she has Chloe and she has Linda. They're like the only like few friends she has other than Lucifer. But it's like, obviously, we don't really know how far their past go back, but you know, being is like, or her a demon, him being a former angel, it's like probably been eons. It's definitely been a very, very long time. So it's like, someone that's kind of been by your side for that long, you know, and you feel like they're abandoning you, not caring about what it means. Like, because this is the second time Lucifer's used her, because he used her back in season 1 to get close to Amenadel to figure out what he was doing and everything. So now he's using her again, but he apologizes because he's like, I didn't know, you know, how this would affect you. Like, I should have known. I should have realized how much this is going to affect you, and I apologize. Like I said, because I brought it up last episode, like, not Amenadel, but Lucifer and Maze have not really been on the same page or really like around each other since season 1. Like, there's been moments throughout season 2, like I brought up last time, but it's like not to the extent of like being close like they were before. Like, she doesn't pop up at Lux, where she used to kind of work as kind of a bartender slash bouncer, which, you know, they've had their distance from each other. But maybe this means this kind of gives them an opportunity to kind of mend fences and kind of get back together and be stronger than ever. So, also, I'm very curious to find out what Maze's plan is to kind of help, you know, Linda with her whole situation. It's like, oh, I'm going to try and help you. Because, you know, I think this also, like, really quickly, like, I feel like this whole situation will give Lucifer a little more perspective onto, like, because obviously he does care about people, because he is trying, like, he feels bad about the whole Linda situation, especially, like, all the help she gives him and everything. Obviously, he cares about Chloe because he did everything he did, because it's like he wanted to keep his distance from her and everything, which makes me wonder, is that another thing that kind of was kind of in Maze's mind, that everything that kind of stacked up? Maybe it's the whole like him getting married and everything. Like, obviously she thought that, oh, that's Lucifer going off doing something stupid. Obviously it was him doing something stupid, but he had like good intentions with his stupidity and stuff like that. But this might also mean maybe going forward he will be a little more open to letting Maze help and everything, not looking at her as just like a burden that she might come and screw things up. It's like, rely on her. That's what she's there for. She will help you without a second thought, because you are someone that's important to her. But the point I was making is, like, I'm wondering what Maze will go about doing. There are 3 options here. 1, she can kill him. I don't think that's going to be the way she's going to go about it, trying to help Linda get her job back. If she did, maybe there'll be more. I mean, I feel like that'd be very disastrous. I mean, obviously it won't help Linda in the long run, and also, and I don't know, who knows, maybe that kind of turns into a bad situation. Nevertheless, 2, she might have sex with him. Strong enough possibility. Maybe. I don't know. We'll have to see. And 3 might just be, you know, outright scary him. Might be a combination of 2 and 3. But I'm very curious to see what Maze will do, decide, you know, trying to help, you know, job situation get fixed. So, turns out next week is in fact the season finale. So, I mean, obviously this is all coming to a head, but I'm very interested to see what goes down. Obviously the flaming sword and everything got the final piece, but what does this mean going forward? You know, will Lucifer go through with his plan and everything, what he has planned for God as well as his mom? I mean, when it's all said and done, will God even be there? I mean, because all this has to be done before, obviously, like there's a clock going now, because it's like, you got to make sure you get his mom through the gates before, like, her vessel breaks apart or whatever. Like I said, what does Amenadel feel about this whole situation? Find out, oh, I'm actually Dad's favorite son, but then it's like, oh, why did he put me through all this stuff and all, you know, blah, 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 blah. Why did all this stuff happen to me? My powers being lost and everything. What does this mean? What has this all been for? Also, will Chloe be any closer to finding out the truth about Lucifer, or will that stuff always stay what it is? Like, because obviously Lucifer doesn't want Chloe to know the truth, because he's always been afraid of her learning the truth. Especially that's been taken back even more so because of the whole situation. Like, obviously he was very reluctant to before already because he cared about it, but now there's this whole situation between them. It's like, will they find their way to each other? We will just have to wait and see what goes down in the season finale. I'm pretty sure it's probably going to be something pretty epic. I mean, I just assume. I mean, also, too, like, will there be any more people that Bianca sends after Charlotte? I'm sure she's going to cover up the whole Chet being dead situation. Might get some help. Most likely will probably handle it by herself. But will Bianca send any more people, especially if she finds out that Charlotte's alive? I mean, the fact is we haven't seen it, but Charlotte does have her own family situation because she has a husband, she has children. So whether that turns into something or not, we will just have to wait and see. Like I said, I'm very excited to see what goes on in the season finale, see what it has in store for us. But really, that's all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.